There is a strategy that can be called manufacturing uncertainty, where companies and other organizations can attack the scientific community by exploiting its rudimentary honesty. That one cannot ascertain 100% confidence from scientific findings and studies. An example of this that may not be very original, but which is enlightening about the phenomena, is how the tobacco companies in the 1950s started an intensive and, for a time, effective PR and lobbying project. This was to question researchers' findings that perhaps smoking could be a potent carcinogen. This campaign consisted of three lenses. 1. Cause and effect relationships have not been established. 2. Statistical data were incomplete. 3. More research is needed. The campaign continued for several decades and even involved the industry publishing its own journal called Tobacco and Health Research, the purpose of which was to distort scientific findings so that they appeared to the public as incomplete as best they could. Some controversial findings were pointed out or focused on individual cases where data were lacking to give the impression that as many researchers considered smoking to be harmless as there were who thought it was harmful. This is a common tactic that we can see even today from the oil and coal industry regarding findings about climate change. Although it was known by the early 1940s that there were some health issues related to smoking, they were generally believed to be mild. Toxic substances have been observed by chemical analysts in cigarettes and pipe tobacco. However, they were believed to be slow-acting and not able to cause severe damage to organs in the younger population. The common medical and public belief was that severe harm to organs from smoking was reserved to the elderly population. Smoking was big business, very big indeed. An amazing 44 to 47% of the US public smoked, according to polling done by the end of the 1940s. About 2/3 of that portion of the populace were men, and 1/3 were women. The amount of cigarettes smoked per day were also very high. A whopping 20+ cigarettes a day per smoker, which is more than a pack. Naturally, due to the overwhelming popularity of the practice, as well as the general lack of medical findings or even investigation regarding smoking and health, a massive portion of doctors and other medical professionals smoked as well. However, one notable New Orleans-based physician by the name of Alton Oshner went against the grain and was a public critic of smoking and the potential health peril associated to the practice. In 1947, after removing tumors in 129 of his lung cancer patients, he wrote in a journal called Annals of Surgery the following: "Neither occupation nor smoking habits, which some reports, including our own, have stressed as possible significance, seemed of any special significance in this particular series." Even to Alton Oshner, a critic of smoking, his own findings of 1/3 of his cancer patients being smokers, although a high share, did not seem to be high enough to with confidence ponder about if smoking caused cancer, and especially in younger demographics, especially since almost half the nation smoked. Citing the Journal of the American Health Association, who followed up the following year by writing, "More can be said in behalf of smoking as a form of escape from tension than against it. There does not seem to be any preponderance of evidence that would indicate the abolition of the use of tobacco as a substance contrary to the public health." So far, there had been a lack of findings regarding the dangers of smoking, up until the year 1950, when 3 important studies appeared. The death rate of cancer had doubled in the United States during the first half of the 20th century. However, since you at the same time had about 20 years being added to the average American lifespan due to improvements in life quality, Such a high death rate of cancer was almost seen as a natural thing. It was widely believed to be a part of the aging process. However, lung cancer appeared more increasingly. It had in fact grown 5 times the rate of other forms of cancer between the year 1938 and 1948. This fact started to make researchers more and more suspicious. Why were the rates of lung cancer, of all cancers, starting to increase relatively to the other forms of cancer to such a degree? One article stands out and was very damning to the tobacco industry. An article that's called "Tobacco Smoking as a Possible Etiologic Factor in Bronchiogenic Carcinoma," a study of 684 proved cases, is now today regarded as a classic in epidemiology due to its size and geographic spread of its sample, and also from the fact that the data was derived from personal interviews and not from hospital records or other secondhand sources. It also broke down the subject into 5 clearly calibrated categories of smoking dosage, ranging from none, meaning less than 1 cigarette daily, over the previous 20 years, to chain smoking. One of the most damning findings was that 96.5% of the lung cancer patients interviewed were moderately heavy to chain smokers. It was also found that 73% of people diagnosed with other types of cancer were also heavy smokers. After this damning article, more suspicion was being had at the tobacco industry by the medical science community. Kyler Hammond of the American Cancer Society was pressed by Dr. Alton Ochsner, the previously mentioned New Orleans surgeon who had early on pointed to cigarettes as the likeliest villain and was then serving as president of the ACS. And Hammond set to work devising a comprehensive study of the problem. Hammond wanted a study that would be more or less immune, in his mind, from any critic. He saw it necessary to reverse the process. The sample population under study ought to consist of asymptomatic smokers and non-smokers, that is, without lung cancer and equally free of other known symptoms of fatal diseases, who would be allowed for a number of years to see which group the disease hit harder. However, devising a study where you would need more than 100,000 subjects was going to prove difficult. Hammond consulted some polling institutions and learned that they would charge about $50 per head to undertake the 4 to 5 year tracking he had in mind. This would cost too much for a non-profit health organization. However, his wife came up with a brilliant idea. Why not enlist the ACS's huge core as well as educated and underutilized housewives? The tobacco companies, of course, started to notice the rise in skepticism regarding the health of smoking, and in order to quell the rise in fears of smoking in the medical community as well as the public, they started to come up with a very simple product that worked mostly through placebo than an actual mechanism. Yet it achieved the result that they were looking for. It quelled public fears. What was this revolutionary product? Cigarette tobacco burning in the range of 700 to 900 degrees Fahrenheit produces hundreds of volatile compounds in a smoky aerosol, composed of millions of microscopic particles of incompletely burned organic matter ejected into a gas stream by the burning cone and condensing as they cooled to room temperature in the 0.2 of a second required to travel from the ember to the smoker's mouth. In the process, many chemical changes had occurred so that the inhaled smoke was very different molecularly from the cured tobacco of the unlit cigarette. The tobacco companies understood that if they added a simple filter to the end where you put your mouth, maybe this would quell certain fears. The brand Lorillard promoted their new cigarette called the Kent as having a filter that was very effective in removing most, if not all, of the bad stuff that was found in cigarette smoke.
And with the big money. Now, take it easy for a minute. Here's a word from Jonathan Blake about a really good cigarette, Kent.
If you smoke a lot, please be certain that you've got the cigarette designed just for you. Change to Kent, change to Kent, change to Kent with the micronite filter.
Hi, this is Jonathan Blake. Say, if you smoke a lot, I suggest that you take the Kent carton test and just see for yourself what a difference Kents can make. You switch to Kent and smoke one carton. Now, I don't mean just a pack or two, but a carton. You'll find that Kent's micronite filter gives you high filtration to help you keep your smoking moderate. And that Kent's custom blend of fine, rich tobaccos gives you the clean, satisfying flavor that you want in a cigarette. If you smoke just one carton of Kent's, I'm confident you'll find that Kent's will give you everything you want in a cigarette. So if you smoke a lot, change to Kent to help you keep your smoking moderate.
I smoke Kent cigarettes. Why don't you get yourself a carton and try them? Thank you.
However, their new cigarette, the Kent, was a flop. Many who tried the new Kent found it very hard to draw upon, and when they did, were rewarded by an almost flavorless smoke. And maybe that's for the best, because their new filter was made out of micronite. What is micronite, you may ask? Why, it's asbestos. Yes. When the medical community started to question the safety of cigarette smoke, in order to quell the public's fear of smoking that was starting to rise, a cigarette company came up with a filter for their cigarette, which consisted of asbestos. You really can't make this shit up, folks. As more media attention was paid to more and more studies during the 1950s, finding causal links between smoking and cancer, the tobacco companies started to actually get afraid. Paul Hand, who was the head of the American Tobacco Company, offered a rare public statement, saying, "Much loose talk on the subject of smoking and health in the press during these recent months, and contending that nothing had been proven either statistically or in laboratories." A company statement added that unwarranted attacks on tobacco products are as old as the industry itself. I was very dubious and personally a heavy smoker when we went into it, explained American Cancer Society epidemiologist Kyler Hammond as he faced the press after delivering his paper, readied at the last moment before the annual convention of the American Medical Association in San Francisco in the year 1954, just 20 months after he launched the previously mentioned study regarding more than 100,000 subjects. They had not intended to make a statement regarding their findings this soon into the study, but, well, they had statistics that were very alarming. Regarding the 187,766 subjects, white men between the ages of 50 and 69 documented a trend way too apparent to withhold from the public. The mortality rates for these 4,854 men who had died showed significantly higher rates for cigarette smokers. 65% more smokers than non-smokers had died in the 50 to 54-year-old range, 60% more in the 55 to 59 range, and 102% more in the 60 to 64 range. Among those smoking under a pack daily, the overall death rate was 52% higher than that of non-smokers. For those smoking a pack or more a day, the death rate was 75% higher. Studies like this one was starting to change public opinion about smoking. By the end of 1954, 1 of every 10 cigarettes bought had a filter tip, and the per capita cigarette consumption dropped another 6% that year. And over the 2 years in which Hammond had done his study and reported the results, there had been a total of 10% drop in smoking. However, the tobacco industry would not go down quietly. No, they would fight back with decades of misinformation. In the 1950s beginnings, scientists had begun to publish scientific studies that suggested that cigarette smoking was linked to lung cancer. One of the most influential of the early studies, which was published by Drs. Ernest L. Wynder and Everett A. Graham in 1950, had shown that smokers had a greater risk of lung cancer than non-smokers did. Later, Wynder and Graham showed that mice who had cigarette tar painted on their backs were also more likely to develop malignant tumors than control mice that were not painted with tobacco tar. Influential magazines such as Reader's Digest and the New York Times had at this time started to write articles discussing these scientific findings. The tobacco industry tried to get a handle on this situation as soon as possible, and they had started to push filters and so-called low-tar cigarettes to customers. Many tobacco companies argued that these new cigarettes were healthier than the old one. However, leaked documents show that these new brands had been created for marketing and public relations purposes, and that there was no scientific validity to their claim that these cigarettes in any way were safer. Part of the industry's response to the evidence linking smoking and disease was the formation of the Tobacco Industry Research Committee, or TIRC. Later on, it was renamed the Council for Tobacco Research, or CTR. TIRC was claimed to be an independent organization, and it would fund independent scientific research. However, in reality, TIRC, and later on CTR as it would be called, funded specific projects whose research results could be used by lawyers in the industry to defend the tobacco companies in court, as well as to influence public opinion and public policy. The Royal College of Physicians in the United Kingdom in 1962, as well as the Surgeons General in 1964, released reports that were quite damning. Documents showed that tobacco companies had been very concerned about potential regulation and had reacted to the reports primarily by trying to protect themselves about potential for regulations. The tobacco companies made numerous ads where they claimed that they had produced a safe or safer cigarette. Many claimed that their cigarette was healthier or less irritating than others.
What cigarette do you smoke? You'll be interested to know how the doctors of America answered that question. Tens of thousands of doctors in all parts of the country, in every state of the Union. Doctors in every branch of medicine were asked, "What cigarette do you smoke, doctor?" In this nationwide survey of general practitioners, surgeons, throat specialists, diagnosticians, and so on, the brand named most was Camel.
Yes, according to this survey, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Try Camels yourself. Make the one sensible cigarette test. Make your own 30-day Camel mildness test in your T-zone. Smoke only Camels for 30 days. Enjoy Camel's rich, full flavor. And see how well Camels agree with your throat. Pack after pack, week after week. See for yourself why Camels are so popular with the doctors of America.
Many so-called facts were used to promote these statements by tobacco companies regarding their new, supposedly safer products. A memo that was written in 1976 by Ernest Pebbles laid out the industry's response to the health controversy over a timeline. Their strategy was to claim that there was a so-called controversy over the effects of smoking, and that they needed more research to really say anything definitive. The research was used to refute unfavorable findings, or at minimum, keep the scientific question open. Now keep in mind, the TIRC, the Tobacco Industry Research Committee, had changed its name in 1964 to CTR, the Council for Tobacco Research USA. However, this is the same organization regardless of its name, so keep in mind that as I say TIRC or CTR later on in this video, I am talking about the same organization. In a document called Cigarette Smoking and Health, What Are the Facts?, which was written by the industry after the Royal College of Physicians had published their report in 1964, and the document argues that there isn't mounting evidence against smoking. The TIRC also argues through this document that the industry is trying to learn what actually causes lung cancer, and that the medical science community has not found the basis for the cause of lung cancer. This document, released by the TIRC, conveniently leaves out, however, that there was already mounting evidence of the increased risk of lung cancer among smokers, and emphasized the fact that most people who smoke do not get lung cancer. As such, the industry tried to argue, looking professional while doing so, that smoking was not an important cause of lung cancer. which is kind of like saying that most people who drive a car don't end up dying in a car crash, as though driving a car is not a major factor in ending up in a car crash. The industry with this document also tried to muddy the waters, a common tactic by dishonest institutions and individuals. They did so by seeding doubt into those who were not as aware of medical principles such as the medical community. In other words, the public. They argued that many things could cause lung cancer, such as viruses, previous lung ailments, air pollutants, heredity, stress and strain, and other factors. Sadly, this document by the TIRC seems to have been successful in at least prolonging the doubt regarding the dangers of smoking among the public, with at least a couple of years. 10 Assertions About Smoking and Health versus the True Facts was a document released in 1967, released by the tobacco industry. And it tells employees in the industry how to respond to data on the adverse health effects of tobacco. E.P. Finch, who was the president of B&W at the time, states in a foreword, "Keeping accurately informed on the smoking and health controversy is an increasing problem. Many assertions are being made which tend to condemn smoking and the tobacco industry. Headlines carry these assertions as news. Unfortunately, the other side is sometimes overlooked, and there is another side to the controversy. The following section states and gives factual replies to 10 of the most common assertions." The document goes on, "Doctors are by no means unanimous in condemning smoking. For example, some of the country's most eminent men of medicine and science from such renowned institutions as Bellevue Hospital, Columbia University Medical School, Yale University Medical School, and New York Medical College have testified before the U.S. Congress that the charges against tobacco remain unproven." A document that was called "Those Who Expressed Doubt Before United States Congress of Smoking-Disease Relationship" had within it excerpts of official testimony before the Senate Committee on Commerce and the House Committee on Interstate and Foreign Commerce in 1965. Reading from the document, it says, "Over 30 of this country's most eminent men of medicine and science have submitted their views before the United States Congress that the charges against tobacco remain unproven. They gave detailed evidence as to why they are unwilling to accept statistical evidence as scientific proof of a causal relationship between smoking cigarettes and human disease. It should, however, be noted that 5 of the 30 scientists later on received funding to their research from CTR, the Committee for the Tobacco Industry."
How often does your job call you out of bed in the middle of the night? Well, if you were a doctor, it would be often. And generally, there isn't much time to spare.
Coffee, Doctor?
Oh, fine. Have a Camel with your coffee.
Thanks.
This night work's kind of rough, isn't it?
That's right. But a Camel's always a pleasure.
Yes, folks, the pleasing mildness of a Camel is just as enjoyable to a doctor as it is to you or me. In a nationwide survey, doctors in all branches of medicine were asked what were included. And according to this nationwide survey, more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Try Camels yourself, the cigarette so many doctors enjoy.
Nicotine is one of the most important drugs found within cigarettes and other forms of tobacco. There is a condition where an individual has lost control over the use of a drug and continues to use it despite its adverse consequences. This forms the basis for the diagnostic criteria for addiction found in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatrist Association. However, there was no real pressure to classify nicotine as highly addictive until the 1988 Surgeon General's report on nicotine addiction. The tobacco industry had argued for decades that smoking is simply a matter of a personal choice. As such, they should not in any way be held responsible for anyone's so-called need to smoke and the health effects that were to follow. As such, it makes perfect sense that the tobacco industry tried for so long to argue that nicotine is not an addictive. If the medical community accepted the basis that nicotine is highly addictive, this would be far harder for the tobacco companies to argue in any potential court case. The industry denying that nicotine was addictive was also a way to protect itself from regulation by the FDA. Under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, a drug is subject to regulation by the Food and Drug Administration if its manufacturer intends that it affects the structure or function of the body when used. Since nicotine was kept in the cigarettes due to an intent to cause addiction in the user, this would obviously mean that tobacco companies were more than qualified to be regulated under the FDA. Doubt is our product, since it is the best means of competing with the body of facts that exist in the mind of the general public. It is also the means of establishing a controversy. If we are successful in establishing a controversy at the public level, then there is an opportunity to put across the real facts about smoking and health. Doubt is also the limit of our product. Unfortunately, we cannot take a position directly opposing the anti-cigarette forces and say that cigarettes are a contributor to good health. No information that we have supports such a claim. From the document Smoking and Health Proposal by B&W, 1969. Following the publication of the Surgeon's General Report in 1964, several states and the Federal Trade Commission began to move to require warnings on cigarette packages and possibly on cigarette advertisement. There was also talk of severely restricting or even ending cigarette advertising. The industry, of course, fought back as hard as it could, but in 1965, Congress had passed the Federal Cigarette Labeling and Advertising Act, which meant that now warning labels had to be placed on cigarette packages. The tobacco industry quietly accepted that the Congress had mandated placing warning labels on cigarette packages. The industry still aggressively fought other parts of legislation. By the early 1970s, the evidence of the health dangers of smoking had accumulated to a point where it would lead to serious legal problems for the tobacco industry. By the mid-1980s, the industry also had to contend with a new wave of product liability lawsuits, filed by plaintiffs who were encouraged by the new significance attached to products liability law regarding toxic substances. The threat of government regulation over tobacco had increased over the decades. In his memo entitled Industry Response to the Cigarette Health Controversy, Pebbles began by noting the means by which the industry had coped with smoking and health controversy. 1. Produce more filter brands with lower tar delivery. 2. Support scientific research to refute unfavorable findings, or at minimum, to keep the scientific question open. 3. Conduct information campaigns against claims by the anti-smoking lobby. Voluntarily meet some of the demands of the anti-smoking lobby, such as agreeing to publish the FTC ratings on tar and nicotine in cigarette advertising. 5. Corporate diversification to minimize the potential adverse financial consequences of the controversy on cigarette sales. According to Pebbles himself, the CTR is simply a means of keeping the controversy alive. A decision by the London Underground to end smoking in 1984 became a milestone and would set a precedent of banning smoking in public spaces. Smoking ended on all Underground trains for a one-year trial period, beginning in July 9th, 1984. 1 month after the smoking had ended, nicotine levels were lower than they had been in both smoking and non-smoking cars. These results meant that some smoke had been leaking into the non-smoking cars. In 1975, Minnesota became the first state to pass a clean indoor air law. Activists in California tried to get the California legislature to pass a similar bill. There was also an attempt to pass an even stronger law statewide by placing it on the ballot as an initiative measure in 1978. This initiative, known as Proposition 5, was defeated by the tobacco industry. In 1980, the same people who had sponsored Proposition 5 made a second attempt to pass a statewide initiative to restrict smoking in workplaces, public spaces, and restaurants. A proposition that was known as Proposition 10. In 1980, when Proposition 10 was to be voted on, an important paper on the health effects of secondhand smoke was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. In the paper, it's demonstrated that non-smokers that simply worked in a very smoky office had pulmonary functions similar to those of light smokers. This study was the first medical evidence of so-called secondhand smoke. CARE, the tobacco industry's organization that ran the campaign against Proposition 10, CARE standing for Californians Against Regulatory Excess, issued a statement to the press criticizing this paper. The evidence that passive smoking in a general environment has health effects remains sparse, incomplete, and sometimes unconvincing. Yet the dearth of scientific data has not prevented this issue from becoming the focus of major debates that have resulted in national and local legislative actions. These actions, in turn, have reinforced the endless conflict between the rights of smokers and those of non-smokers. This statement from CARE also included general comments from several scientists. It should be mentioned, however, unsurprisingly, that these individuals received money through the industry's special accounts. In a ballot measure where the voters in San Francisco approved of Proposition P, which was a referendum that ratified a city ordinance requiring employers to provide smoke-free areas for non-smoking employees in office workplaces, the tobacco industry was defeated. This defeat being the first, really, of its kind. The tobacco industry had spent a whopping $1,250,000 to campaign against the proposition. And it would inspire activists all over the US to push for legislation regarding secondhand smoke. What wasn't really known at the time was that the tobacco companies themselves had engaged in much research about the potential health hazards of secondhand smoke and had found that it was indeed dangerous. Since then, the tobacco industry has been struck by the law many times. In 1994, several states mounted legal action to recover the hundreds of millions of dollars the tobacco industry cost taxpayers in medical costs. In 1992, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, established that tobacco smoke is in fact air pollution. In 1995, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration and the Food and Drug Administration started to regulate tobacco smoke as a workplace toxin, and now classified nicotine as an addictive drug. The mighty tobacco industry had finally been struck by the law. Although the rate of people smoking has gone down noticeably the last couple of decades, a new way of enjoying nicotine has seen a steady increase instead, and what's worrying is that in the younger population, you see a very dramatic rise. I'm talking about vaping. The basic principle is that instead of inhaling a particulate smoke, you are instead breathing in water vapor, and within this water vapor, you have certain substances dissolved, such as nicotine. According to data from 2019 by Pew Research, the shares of secondary students who have vaped nicotine in the past month have roughly doubled since 2017. From 2017 to 2019, the shares who had done so increased among 12th graders, 11 to 25%, 10th graders, 8 to 20%, and 8th graders, 4 to 9%. According to preliminary data from the University of Michigan's Monitoring the Future survey. In addition, vaping increased among college students from 2017 to 2018, the most recent year for which NTF has released data for this group. In fact, the uptick in vaping among college students for nicotine from 6% in 2017 to 16% in 2018, and marijuana from 5% to 11% were among the greatest one-year increases for any substance asked about since the survey was first administered in 1975. In a July 2018 Gallup poll, 9% of U.S. adults said they regularly or occasionally vape. still below the 20% who said they regularly or occasionally smoke cigarettes. 2 in 10 Americans ages 18 to 29 said they vape, compared with 8% of those ages 30 to 64 and fewer than 0.5% among those 65 and older. As of summer 2018, those under 30 were less likely than older Americans to believe vaping is harmful to one's health. Roughly 1/5 of U.S. adults, 22% under age 30, said vaping is very harmful to one's health, compared with 40% of adults ages 30 to 64 and 48% of those 65 and older. According to the same July 2018 Gallup survey, comparatively large majorities of Americans say smoking conventional cigarettes is very harmful to one's health. But there were no significant differences by age. 8 in 10 or more in each group said that smoking cigarettes is very harmful to one's health. Vaping by friends or family is a common reason why some students choose to do it. Among students in grades 6 through 12 who said they had ever used an e-cigarette, the most common reason given was used by a friend or family member, 39%, according to the 2016 National Youth Tobacco Survey. Roughly 1/3 of these students, 31%, said they used an e-cigarette because of availability of flavors such as mint, candy, fruit, or chocolate, while 17% said they used it because they perceived them to be less harmful than other forms of tobacco, such as cigarettes. According to the Food and Drug Administration as of this year, this increase in youth usage is a cause for concern because tobacco use is the leading cause of preventable disease and death in the United States, and because nearly all tobacco products contain nicotine. As adolescent brains are still developing, nicotine exposure during youth and young adulthood can change the way the brain works, leading to a lifetime of addiction and, in some cases, causing long-lasting effects such as increased impulsivity and mood disorders. Studies also find teens who use e-cigarettes have an increased risk of trying combustible cigarettes. While completely switching from combustible cigarettes to e-cigarettes may potentially benefit adult smokers' health, no tobacco product, including e-cigarettes, is safe for youth to use. What we can say is that e-cigarettes don't seem to be quite as harmful, at the very least, as traditional cigarettes. However, these products do still contain nicotine, as well as some other ingredients that may be carcinogens. It is one thing to make an informed decision as an adult, to vape or smoke. However, getting adolescents addicted to tobacco products or other products containing nicotine is completely indefensible. And the lack of effort from the tobacco companies to publicly discourage the youth from trying vaping shows that the tobacco companies, as well as the companies that make only e-cigarettes, are very much aware of the youth population and its cultural fascination with the practice. However, once again, the industry seems to be unwilling to do anything about it because it hurts their bottom line. The scientific community is vulnerable to these attacks as these interests exploit a domestic feature of modern pragmatics in research: honesty and transparency. Researchers cannot begin to claim that their findings are 100% confident because they cannot be, and lying about findings violates research ethics. No. A solution to the vulnerability cannot be found in emulating the methodology of the opponents, but a solution that works is to ensure that citizens in a society are well educated and understand critical thinking. However, it is a solution that will take a long time if politicians strive to fulfill it through education reforms, that is. But social media is also a way to reach the public directly, and several climatologists, such as Michael E. Mann, are active on Twitter and discuss with those who are willing. Maybe the future lies in becoming visible to the masses.
Two feet of fresh snow fell last night. The high range is cut off. If the cattle can't get to you, you've got to get to the cattle. where the flavor is. Famous Marlboro Red or new Marlboro 100s, the Longhorns. Come to Marlboro Country.
Places all join hands, circle left. Now circle right and listen to me. LS, MFT. Alimenture corners like swinging on a gauge. A right to you, honey, with a right and left 8. Grand right and left around you go. Lucky strike means fine tobacco. Meet your honey and give her a whirl. All swing around with the little girls. Smoke 'em, then you'll see. LS, MFT. Promenade and don't you fall, promenade around the hall. Lucky strike is first again with tobacco men. Promenade straight down the pike, it's time right now for a lucky strike. Yes, for smoking that you're bound to like, you just can't beat a lucky strike.
Hiya, Mr. Flintstone.
Greetings, Rocky, my boy. Pack of Winstons, please.
Oh, you like them Winston cigarettes, huh, Mr. Flintstone?
But of course, they really got something.
You bet you like. Folks who really enjoy smoking know it's what's up front that counts, and that's where Winston steps out ahead of the crowd with their exclusive filter blend. Choice golden tobaccos, specially selected and specially processed for filter smoke.
Hold it.
What you mean?
What are you pitching Winstons at me for? You know I never smoke nothing else.
Just practicing, Mr. Flintstone. Everybody knows that.
Winston tastes good, like cigarette should.
Yeah.
See you soon, Rocky.
He's an independent guy. He likes to set his own kind of style. Doesn't care what's in or new. Chooses things to suit his taste. Couldn't care what others do. He's an old gold filters man. Just an ordinary guy with an independent mind. A mind of his own. He's an old gold filters man.
Old Gold Filters, the cigarette for independent people. Now in 100 size, too. The better 100, with flavors that never came through a filter before. And with valuable gift star coupons.
The gift coupons? She saves them. It's the flavor I'm after. Why smoke them if you can't taste them?
He's an Old Gold Filters man.
Old Gold Filters king size and 100s, the better 100 with gift star coupons.
There's a wonderful world of softness, a wonderful world of freshness. It's the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful world of Salem cigarettes.
Salem softness freshens your taste.
Wow! Salem softness freshens your taste. Smoke Salem cigarettes.
Salem gives you a modern filter, plus rich tobacco taste, smoothed with menthol, softened with fresh air. For Salem's special paper breathes in fresh air with every puff to bring you Salem's air-softened taste.
There's a wonderful world of softness, a wonderful world of freshness. It's the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful world of Salem cigarettes.
Salem's softness freshens your taste.
Grandstand managers, me and my date. Slide, Kelly, slide, safe at the plate. That ties the game and their pitcher's done. Took out my cigarettes and offered her one. She said, some filters taste strong. How about yours? I said the taste of Viceroy really scores. Viceroy tastes the way you'd like a filter cigarette to taste. Not too strong, not too light. Viceroy's got the taste that's right. Solid smash and we won the game, and for the winning taste, Viceroy's the name.
That's right.
Now, if you smoke all 7 leading filter brands, you'll find some too strong, some too light. But Viceroy's got the filter for the taste that's right. Not too strong, not too light.
Viceroy's got the taste that's right.
That's right, smoke Viceroy for the taste that's right.
Switch from Hots to Snow Fresh Filter.
Cool. Cool, Snow Fresh, cool, taste so clean, so refreshing, smoke cool.
As cool and as clean as a breath of fresh air. That's Snow Fresh Filter Cool. Your mouth feels clean, your throat refreshed. The finest leaf tobacco, mild, refreshing menthol, and the world's most thoroughly tested filter. That's Snow Fresh Filter Cool. Why don't you switch from Hots to the Snow Fresh coolness of cool? As cool and as clean as a breath of fresh air. America's most refreshing cigarette. Snow Fresh Filter Cool.
Bye-bye.
Lucky Strike. First again with Tobacco Men. First again with Tobacco Men.
LSMFT, LSMFT. Lucky Strike means fine tobacco.
Yes, in a cigarette, it's the tobacco that counts. And Lucky Strike means fine tobacco.
So round, so firm, so fully packed, so free and easy on the draw.
So for your own real deep down smoking enjoyment, smoke that smoke of fine tobacco, Lucky Strike.
Smooth all the way. Newport's fresh menthol keeps it that way. Smoother and fresher, day after day. The smoothest tasting menthol cigarette.
What's going on?
Nothing, dear.
Newport tastes smoother, day after day. The smoothest tasting menthol cigarette.
Come to where the flavor is. Come to Marlboro country.
Remember how great cigarettes used to taste.
Lucky still do. If your smoking pleasure has been somehow misplaced,
It's Lucky's for you.
Yes, you get back to smoking when you smoke Lucky Strike, because you get back to fine tobacco, Lucky Strike tobacco, with a taste that's unforgettable and quality that never quits. LSMFT, Lucky Strike means fine tobacco. That's all there is to it.
Tobacco and taste too fine to filter. Taste you're sure to like. Tobacco and taste too fine to filter. Yours in every Lucky Strike.
Remember how great cigarettes used to taste.
Lucky still do.
is Marlboro country. Come to where the flavor is. Come to Marlboro country.